In this video, we'll be discussing how to diagnose an oil leak on an engine. I'll use the S54 out of a BMW M3 for an example, but the feedback really applies to any engine. Now let's start with the whiteboard. You want to make sure as you're troubleshooting your oil leaks that you go from the highest pressure in the system to the lowest pressure. You start with an oil pump that's going to generate all the pressure, therefore we'll have the highest pressure within the system, and it's going to go to the power cylinder, and that will go to other components. Now as you target the connections between the oil pump and other components, you want to make sure that you target the actual seals that will have most of the problems. So you see the joints that connect different elements to different pipes, those are going to be where your leaks are going to generate. You can see there an oil leak, and I'll show you below the car you have some other issues as well. Now specific to this engine, you're going to have a couple of very popular leak paths, and those have all been addressed by me. Things like oil line that connects the engine block to the oil cooler, your power steering reservoir, your Vanos high pressure oil feed line, your clutch line, your power steering reservoir lines, your power steering high pressure line, as well as what is called a CPV valve. It's essentially a pressure regulating valve on the side of the block. Those are all very, very common leak points. One item I did not mention is a timing chain tensioner. Has an aluminum seal that needs to be replaced as well. Otherwise, it'll cause issues. If you know what it looks like, you can see it right now. Now that's how you diagnose an oil leak. Now for the cheap, quick, and effective fix that works for any engine that has been made that is powered by either diesel or gasoline. Before we get to that though, I want to make sure that you target the fix to only the root cause components. Try your best not to spend money on a component that is not failing. To do that, you want to clean the system with either brake clean or electronic cleaner. This is really good. It's a safer alternative because as you spray the engine bay, there are going to be a lot of connections throughout the system. You want to try not to damage those. Brake clean is probably okay, but it could cause the plastics to become brittle quicker than intended. So you want to spray the engine as much as possible. I usually use 1 or 2 cans every time I'm trying to troubleshoot a system. Make sure everything is dry, wipe off the excess, and go drive the car around a little bit. Make sure it's not raining, make sure the roads are dry and not dirty, and then park your car and inspect for leaks. Even weeping between connections can cause bigger issues. Now once you have identified the leak source, if you have replaced the component previously, then this is the fix for you. Now for the materials list, I usually choose the Great Value quarter ply paper towels, but you can also spend a little more and use the Harbor Freight shop towel. This one's going to last you a little bit longer for this fix that we'll be talking about. This one you have to do a little bit more often, but I'm always under the car changing one thing or fixing another, that it's cost effective enough for me. So the first thing you want to do is you want to grab the material that you'll be conducting the fix with. You know, use the creeper to get under the car. Hopefully use some non-Harbor Freight jack stands. They're under recall, but that's all that I had available. So we'll move on. You want to identify the source of the leak. Make sure to really thoroughly clean your car before doing this procedure, but that's okay if you haven't. If you think you're confident about the oil leak, this will get you covered. So you want to be careful. So here you see that Vanos high pressure oil return line, it's leaking. I replaced it with an upgraded part about 6 months ago. I don't think replacing it again is gonna fix my problem. So what I want to do is actually get one of the quarter ply tools that we purchased, and you want to stick it in there, and that's going to solve your problem. Now looking at another example for this, you see the power steering reservoir. That's a common leak path for this car. The plastic becomes brittle over time and starts to leak. Now I've replaced this 6 months ago with a brand new OEM unit, but it's leaking once again, so we want to make sure that we add our components. This is actually a heavy leak, and I don't usually recommend using twice the parts that's recommended by the manufacturer, but that's okay. What they recommended leaks anyway, so let's do 2 of them. And that should take care of the problem until my next track day, and hopefully last the entire track time. So this is not an oil pan leak, it's actually coming from the Vanos unit. One of the external seals is cracked and it's causing an oil leak. That's usually a couple $1,000 fix, but in this case, we're going to use our quick, simple, dirty, and clean, effective way to stop the problem. Don't worry about spinning components, they'll actually trim the design solution to your length as they're moving. So you don't have to worry about any clearance issues here. Usually I get some leaks on the steering rack, so I want to wedge my design solution in there. Now you may be wondering, what if I want to spend the extra money because I don't wrench on the car very often and I want a longer term solution that's not going to give me a headache? For those instances, you want to go for the Harbor Freight shop towel. And let me give you an example of what that looks like. You see, they don't have the quarter ply. Installation is a little bit more difficult, but it's possible if you spend enough time doing the work. Here we have a coolant leak coming out of I don't know where, so we want to be a little bit more generic with the application. Because I don't want this coolant leak to get any worse, I will actually use 2 of the more expensive design solutions. You notice that it's by the exhaust manifold. Don't worry about that. The design solution will actually take care of itself. With any rotating components, with any heat, it'll actually cause the absorption rate of the raw material in the design solution to actually cling onto those leaky particles, so they should no longer bother you. Now this design fix worked for me, and I'm confident it'll work for you. However, before attempting this or any other changes to your car, I would recommend that you consult your local mechanic.